So if you want to talk about reInvent, get into the Slack member calls. We're bringing back together today three interesting people. Stephanie Gooch, who is an AWSer, actually was one of the first 26 founding members of the FinOps Foundation before she joined AWS. She's going to be sharing her thoughts on reInvent. Justin Brodley, who I had the good fortune of actually being on a boat with at the Venetian at reInvent, and he has tons of knowledge about the space. He runs the Cloud Pod. He probably knows more about the announcements than anybody on this call. He's going to be helping share his story. And Joe Daly, who just joined the FinOps Foundation. Joe is one of the only people I know, probably the only one I know, who has actually built a FinOps practice at over two Fortune 100 companies. So excited to get Joe in here. I hope he's ready to unmute. Later today, if you have any friends in Asia Pacific, we have another session running with Mike Fuller from Atlassian, who is going to be joined again by Justin and Peter Shai to talk about the session for our friends in Asia Pacific. And with that, Joe, are you ready to take over?
Absolutely. I was born ready to take
over.
To
Joe.
How's everyone doing today? I'm going to MC this event and throw these slides, these announcement slides, over to Ashley and Justin as we go through. First one, these are the main topics coming out of the ECS and EBS, EC2 and EBS categories. Steph, let me just throw it right to you first. What are the main takeaways from these announcements?
Okay, so I'm going to go through all of them, and then we're going to go through and have a chat about them all, I think. So starting off, recycling bin. So this retains all your deleted snapshots for X amount of days. You can set this up for whatever works for you. And it kind of runs off of a two-level model. So you have that initial deletion, and then there's kind of, you can designate a recycle bin admin, and they can go for the full deletion. So this can run on all snapshots or certain snapshots, sorry, with tags. Good thing I do have that water handy. Run off of tags. So you can really start to move things. People get very concerned about tagging and it's about deleting their EBS snapshots. And this process means that you can delete them, but they're there for a little bit just in case. Then you also have archive. So if you intend to keep your snapshots for kind of longer than 90 days, then this is a really good opportunity for you, and it saves about 75% of your snapshot costs. So if you finish a project or a migration or something big happens and you're like, okay, we want to keep this for a while, but we don't want to pay the full price. It's not something that's going to be incrementally changed. This is where you can use archive. Then big announcement was Graviton 3. So this is really good for compute intensive workloads, things like batch processing, media encoding, and scientific modeling. So it's 25% better compute performance against the Graviton 2s, I think. And forgive me, I'm kind of going through these quite quickly, but we will go through and chat about them a bit more. And also Mac 1 has been released. So this delivers up to 60% price performance over the kind of x86 based Mac instances previously released last year. And finally, R6i for memory intense workloads. So these are 15% better compute performance over the R5 instances. So lots of big kind of server announcements, but also looking at that EC2 other kind of bracket that have been announced.
I love the idea behind EBS recycle bin. I like to share hold my beer moments. There's not many opportunities for a director of FinOps to become personally responsible for creating an outage. But if this service was available 2 years ago, it could have prevented the one time someone could have pegged me for it. I was trying to initiate some snapshot cleanup. Unfortunately, I was working with an engineer who did exactly as I told him to, as opposed to exactly what I meant him to do. So, and those of you on the call who have worked with me or for me know that those are two completely different things. So being able, sometimes it looks like a snapshot, but it's not really a snapshot. It's an active live image that your EC2s are launched from. So all those were deleted, gone forever, and had to be quickly rebuilt. And then some angry people about me trying to save some money. So I think that's a really cool feature. Justin, what are your thoughts on the new instance types and processors behind them?
Yeah, I mean, Graviton 2 is now several years old in the market, so it's time for a new chip anyways. We were starting to see some FUD from other vendors like Google that basically their Tau VMs were actually faster than the Graviton 2. So, it was kind of expected going into reInvent that we'd see something around Graviton, which is now the new 3. 25% better performance. That puts it right on par with what Google's doing, which is a great if you have a multi-cloud workshop that you're trying to figure out the best bang for your buck. Going into the R6i, which is also based on the new Intel chips. If you're willing to pay that Intel tax, you get the benefit of better price performance ratios as well, with a ton of memory. So if you're heavily memory dependent, like HANA workloads, for example, R6i might be a great use case for you, which is really awesome. And then, of course, the M1 Macs are going to give you the support for the latest and greatest Mac hardware and Mac builds you want to do for your mobile apps. So typically you're using these for a build farm or some other type of workload related to your build pipeline. So not a huge cost, but it's always been in the Mac side. Turning it on, you pay for this for 24 hours at minimum. So do keep that in mind if you're going to use these. There is a bit of a tax due to Macintosh's, Apple's licensing terms, really. But overall, everything they did in hardware was a big improvement on price performance. Definitely update your calculations and your FinOps numbers, because you're going to get savings or at least better performance for the same cost, which is always a win for us in the space.
Awesome. And speaking of all this compute, there was an update that we'll talk about on the next slide. JR, if you could, there you go. Nobody is better at advancing slides in this industry than JR Storment, folks.
Chief slide advancer. That's my role.
All right. So, Steph, give us the lowdown on the update here.
Yeah, so two cool updates for Compute Optimizer, a tool that we've been around for a while now. It's a great resource. If you haven't seen it before, go check it out. It's something that's there to help you optimize your compute. So it works normally off of the 4 main areas of EBS, Lambda, EC2 and auto scaling groups, so just a bit of background. And the new metrics are enhanced metrics. They're a paid feature. When you activate them, it will look at 2 of those. So it will look at EC2 and auto scaling recommendations. And what this paid metrics will do will give you a longer look back period. Is one of the main things. So this is super useful if you run off of like a monthly or quarterly basis with your applications. So we know that some customers have seen it where at the moment, it's done on 14 days is the default. So if you have a longer kind of running application process, things that are running over a couple of months, that 14 days may not be the best way of looking at it. So kind of giving you that option to extend it. You are charged based on the number of hours per resource running. So if you have an instance running 24/7 for 31 days, it's 25 cents, so not super expensive, but it's something to be aware of, that when you turn that on, be conscious of what accounts are turning it on for, so that you can utilize it to its best ability, but not get any cost shock from it. And there's also a nice new view, which is what this slide is showing us, is this new kind of dashboard that's at the front. You don't have to do anything if you've already got Compute Optimizer set up. It will just show you some nice tracking and saving metrics so that you get that better kind of visual straight off the bat. But because before it was kind of divvied up into smaller groups, now you've got this nice thing, and this view is free.
I love a good donut chart.
Who doesn't?
Yeah. Justin, any thoughts on Compute Optimizer?
Yeah, I mean, this tool, when it first came out, was slightly limited in that it was very focused on CPU and memory. But as they've added in disk I/O, they've added in these new dimensions. The power this tool gives you to really predict your workload is just getting better and better. So if you checked this out in the past and you haven't looked at it in a while, maybe it didn't give you the right answers, or you got a bad recommendation that you got burned by, I definitely recommend taking a look at this again. Extending out that window is great, especially for servers that are maybe involved in your month-end processing, or on a weekly batch job process that only runs once a month or so. Those type of things were being missed prior. So being able to look back that 3-month period really does give you a better perspective and a much better idea and confidence that these recommendations are the right recommendations for your server, and not just a dead slow moment for that particular server. So this, I love what they're doing in this space. I think this is an area that they continue to invest and continue to drive a lot of great insights and DevOps capabilities to your teams.
Awesome.
And also in the comments I've just seen, is Compute Optimizer free? So the general Compute Optimizer is, but there's a new metric which is paid, just to clarify.
And you can turn that on and off, correct?
Yeah. So you can choose if you know that you've got something that's going to be like a big project that's running for 3 months and you really want to be kind of careful and monitor what's going on, turn it on. But then if you don't need it anymore, get rid of it.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Next slide, please, because it's not all just compute in the cloud. It's also storage. Steph?
We love some S3 storage. So a couple of things here, 2 big points at the start. So infrequent access price reductions for standard S3 and for one zone. So there's a chunk of 31% savings, which is great. And then there's 2 kind of retrieval things with Glacier. So there's S3 Glacier instant retrieval. So this is for long-lived archive data that requires millisecond retrieval. So that now has its 68% saving. And also the same kind of concept is available in intelligent tiering archive now. So the same saving, 68%, and it's for the same type of data, but it's part of the intelligent tiering process. So Glacier retrieval on its own is this kind of long-lived data that you can put in there yourself, or you can also choose that option in intelligent tiering. And there's also the new Glacier flexible retrieval. So 10% reduction on the flexible retrieval rate. So a nice bit of savings that just kind of are happening now.
Justin, what's your thoughts on storage?
These are all great. I mean, some of these are just easy, enable it and get the savings. The infrequent access price reduction is a bit limited to the Asia Pac regions, although it does pick up Northern California as well. And I believe Brazil, Sao Paulo region. So it isn't all regions on that one. So you may or may not get a savings depending on where your workloads are based on. But in those regions, those are some of the higher price ones anyways. So it's great to see that savings now rolling out really globally. The Glacier stuff and instant retrieval really solves the big use case problem of, I don't need the data until I need it, and then I really need it fast. And so that's the nice thing about that particular service, and the ability to take data and archive it out until that audit requirement comes up or there's some lawsuit that you need to get that data, can really save you in a big pinch, which is great. And I think intelligent tiering is, now with this new archive instant access tier, I think it's another great level that, for many companies, that should be the default, as long as you understand your data access model and understand the cost of transitioning between the tiers. But being able to just do it intelligently without having to think about it or do a data migration, which can cost you a lot of money, makes that service really great. But I do have some cautions on it because you can get burned if you're not aware of your data access model very well.
Yeah, on that Glacier instant retrieval, if your legal team needs something in 2 weeks, they're going to wait 2 weeks to ask for it. So it's a good feature to be able to get that right back. So.
Can we get the slides for this meeting?
So slides are shared currently in the members calls section of the Slack channel. So we'll get those. Next slide, please. JR. Sustainability. This was a big, this is a lot of stirring, a lot of people excited about this one.
Yeah, me, one of them. If anyone saw my Twitch show about sustainability, I was super psyched about that. So sustainability, so one of the big things is that we have released a new pillar. So as some of you may know, Amazon runs up a bunch, we have a set amount of pillars, cost optimization is one of them, and sustainability is now going to be a new pillar. So this will be something that will contain questions, and the whole goal of it is to help you guys or customers generally evaluate their current architecture and design and improve workloads to make them more sustainable in the cloud. And this especially goes hand in hand with cost optimization. So looking forward to seeing how this pillar grows and how we can, as FinOps practitioners, kind of take advantage of that and link with it. And then the other thing is that Amazon are going to be releasing a carbon footprint tool to show you how you can see how much you're using. This is the sustainability calculator, and that's coming next year. So not released just yet, but it's coming in the future.
Yeah, and the nice thing about this is all the cloud providers are going down this path of providing this, but the well-architected piece of this is unique to Amazon. No other cloud provider is giving you these well-architected practices of how to actually think about designing sustainable workloads. And so, we all kind of expected there'd be something in this space, but I do feel Amazon raised the bar across the industry on this one with well-architected practices on top of it.
Yeah, and community members, FinOps Foundation practitioners, members, we hear you. Pretty much for the last 2 weeks, it's been a nonstop ping. What are we going to do with sustainability? What are we going to do with sustainability? Because the FinOps team is also going to become the sustainability team in the IT department.
Well, and Joe, just to call it the elephant in the room, I have been hearing a lot more of that from the Europeans and less from the Americans, which is unfortunate. But yes, we need more focus here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it's coming, folks. And if you want to keep, and just a callback, if you want to keep pressure on, fill out the survey and talk about sustainability in the survey. But much more to come on this one. Green ops, absolutely. Next slide, please, JR. Serverless, Justin, hit us up with serverless.
Yeah, so the serverless announcements came fast and furious during Adam's keynote. So first up, serverless options for Redshift, MSK, which is their managed Kafka service, and EMR. This can really change a big portion of your data story. So these are definitely something to take a look at. You're really getting the ability to not have to commit resources or commit clusters until you actually have data that needs to be processed, which is great. So the Redshift announcement is very similar to what you'd see with Snowflake. So if you have a data model that you run reporting once a week, or you only run it at certain times of the day, this would save you a ton of money versus running a Redshift cluster all the time. Kafka, there's no messages in your message queue, why pay for it? And that's always great for MSK. And then the EMR side, I think this is really exciting for people using the Hadoop's ecosystem. Being able to dynamically run Hive workloads without having to pre-provision that capacity is really quite nice. One of the big reasons why you potentially would choose Kafka is because you didn't have to necessarily decide your shard size or the number of shards you wanted. And that feature is now coming into Kinesis as well with their new on-demand pricing model. So instead of pre-provisioning shards and capacity in your Kinesis for peak load, you can now do this on-demand model, which gets you a much more dynamic capacity provisioning capability there, which is quite great. And then Graviton 2 is coming to Fargate, which is huge if you're on the Fargate bandwagon. Get that price performance benefit there. And I suspect that we'll see Graviton 3 starting to roll out on all these services as well. The big heavy lift for most Amazon teams, I think, was moving to Graviton, which is the ARM transition. They've all done that now. So adopting Graviton 3, I expect will come in the next couple quarters for most of the services that support Graviton 2 today. So if you're on Fargate, you're going to get that benefit as well once they roll out Graviton 3, which I think is great.
Yeah, Graviton 2 to Fargate wins the prize for nerdiest thing said today.
I mean, if we got Stargate in there too, we'd be really set.
All right, let's move it along because we do have time, and I want to ask you some more questions on this database. Next slide.
So there's a couple of great things in database. DynamoDB table class. This is now a reduced usage table or standard, versus a standard table, which is provisioned for a certain number of IOPS and workloads. If you have a table that you want to have available to you, but isn't always used in every transaction you're doing in Dynamo, you can save up to 60% just by changing the table class type to the reduced access model. So for people who are using Dynamo, there's a lot of cost sharp edges that I think this helps reduce dramatically for many companies and can help deliver a lot of value to your business. The next one up is it's not exactly a FinOps announcement, but it has FinOps implications, which is the DevOps Guru for RDS. So if you think about your database engineers that you have in your teams, they're typically, there's a group of them that we've kind of replaced with managed services like RDS, people who used to install SQL Server, people who used to do the backups and the train logs. You get all that benefit now from Amazon. And so they've been focused more heavily on performance tuning and performance optimization and making sure those databases are right sized. DevOps Guru gives you a machine learning capability to help do that work. So instead of doing the undifferentiated heavy lifting that we see all the time in the database space, now you can get recommendations directly from ML, from the DevOps Guru on your RDS instance. They'll tell you, hey, if you optimize these queries, you can reduce the performance of them and all the different things you want to do, which also may result in eventual cost savings for you as well. You may not need this big of an instance as you thought once you've optimized your code. So I think this is a huge benefit for many database teams to really help them get a leg up that all of their peers have been getting for the last several years. It's nice to see that now coming to RDS as well. And then before reInvent, they announced the DR recovery. This was for an acquisition, but being able to now automatically manage your DR capabilities with a service that you don't have to think about as much, configure it, let it go, let it synchronize the data, and then only enable your DR needs when you actually have the desire to enact the DR test saves you a ton of money. And have this now as a native Amazon service means the service is going to continue to get invested in a big way, which will help you long-term in savings.
Yeah, I think that DevOps Guru is good so that FinOps practitioners have new things to argue about with Enterprise DB. Steph, any thoughts on the database announcements?
I think the DynamoDB's like infrequent access stuff is going to be really interesting when to do that. And like you said, if you know like what to look for. I haven't used DynamoDB in a while, and so I am looking forward to delving into that, especially for my customers, and figuring out what are the markers where, yes, you should turn this on for this, and hopefully sharing that information with everybody else.
Awesome. Awesome. I think we have one more slide before I get to hit you both up with questions. Justin, data transfer.
Yeah, so this was an exciting announcement for those who have, some type of data data going out of the Amazon region. Of course, you don't pay for inbound, but you pay for outbound. Previously, this limit was 1 gigabit for basically going out of a NAT gateway. Out of a normal public zone. And so now they've increased that from 1 gigabit to 100 gigabit, which for many workloads will be enough to cover their basic use cases, which typically are things like grabbing patches from upstream repositories, downloading packages they need to do their build, et cetera. That is all now most likely going to be covered for most companies in the 100 gig tier. So that's a big savings, and that's now no longer a 12-month free tier. It's now a permanent free tier. So you don't have to worry about this when expiring, and all of a sudden having a bill that you didn't have before in the prior month because your free tier expired. They've also extended that to Amazon CloudFront. That was, I believe, 100 gigabytes before. That's now 1 terabyte, then allowing you to go out through CloudFront to get that data as well, which is great savings. So for most people, this will result in some immediate savings in their bill. Most likely, if they're using these type of capabilities, any access to the internet is now basically more covered by the free tier, and it can result in a couple $100 in savings for many companies.
Staff, free tier, more free tier is a good message, right?
Oh yeah, good message. I'll make a note. Pass it back.
More free tier, less expiring free tier, everything in that space is great.
That's awesome. Awesome. All right, so questions on the next slide. It's just a reminder for all of you on the call. Post your questions in Slack. We're doing a great job crowdsourcing the answers. Justin and Steph will also, if you think of a question later, they'll be checking there to give their insights. I wanted to call out Jen Hughes, Ashley Hermatko, Caitlin DeCrane, and Sherry Wooldridge, FinOps Foundation members who presented at reInvent. Those are the ones at least I know of. There's probably more of you. Question. My question to you, Sherry, to you, Justin. I was calling you Sherry, and Steph. My favorite thing I think I saw last week was during Caitlin DeCrane's presentation. She mentioned that they use weekly scorecards, send out weekly scorecards about tagging compliance risks for each of the product teams that they support. What were some of your favorite moments from last week that you got out of it?
I mostly attended the keynotes and then had a lot of meetings, so I didn't have a great breakout session experience for myself personally. But I think the big takeaway is that COVID has not slowed down this community in any way. The people who are there are very energized to be there. There's a lot of great things going on, and I think the ability to take advantage of things like Evidently, which is their new feature flagging capability. Those things are going to be huge transitions that are going to happen in the next 1 to 2 years as people adopt these new services. And I'm just excited to see where we're going next with all these capabilities and what companies are going to do with them.
Steph, what's your favorite thing?
I think so. Last year I was just started my job at Amazon, so doing reInvent was a bit hectic, and so this year I got to really sit and kind of appreciate it, pay attention to what was actually being released, and try and follow everything and keep notes. And especially for the Twitch show we did last week, and it's just great to see. Like I have someone made a deck in our team of all of the resources that have been released that affect cost, and there just seems to be so many. And so the thing I'm really excited about is that we've just gone over all of them, all these new opportunities for us to delve into with customers and you guys as customers into ways to optimize. And I'm just excited to go and learn about all these new things and just figure stuff out that I haven't recommended before and now have an opportunity to.
That's awesome. That's awesome. My last question for both of you, unless I think of a good one from your answers, are I haven't been to reInvent since I wasn't there last week, and obviously no one was there in 2020. So 2019 was the last time I was at reInvent, and I'm remembering that week. The first thing you do when you leave reInvent is make your body healthy again, get some sleep, drink some water, eat a vegetable. But once you do that, you have to start processing all of this information and deciding what to do. Steph, I'll start with you on this one. from your experiences at reInvent, how do you start processing all this information?
Yeah, it's overwhelming. And even like we had a Slack channel, we're just putting stuff in. It's too much, I think. But the good thing is you guys on this call care about cost. So you kind of already narrowed it down to one of the pillars, which makes your life a little easier. So I kind of did this as being someone who works in sharing information to customers. I kind of have a massive list of all of the things that have been announced that relate to cost, basically what we did today. And then I'm just going to go through those, especially like I'm doing it with my customers, and say, okay, what applies to them? And for you guys, what applies to me? So what's important? And then prioritize those things, and then the rest will kind of come around, and you'll probably hear about it through the peers, through calls like this, through discussions. But focus on like maybe 5 things. You're like, okay, we can benefit from this release, and go and like target that, rather than try and take everything in, and use resources like this. I think these links are all going to be shared out. Kind of keep them all together, read about everything, and then make a decision on what's going to benefit you the most, and take some action on that.
Awesome. Justin, how about you? How do you handle all this info?
Well, unlike the Amazon folks who are prepping for reInvent, my job starts after reInvent, because the podcast can get through all of this stuff. So we had to break it down. We had to go through every announcement, figure out how we're going to talk about it on our show, and get that out to our audience of people who follow on and listen to what we learned at reInvent. But for the day drop side, I think what's really more interesting. Typically it's breaking it down by interest groups. So let's get all the data announcements over to our data team. Let's make sure they understand what they're going to be, so they can start adopting those capabilities. Let's get all of our new EC2 stuff over to our compute team, so they can start looking at do we have an opportunity to take advantage of these capabilities. And it's really starting to have that discussion. And what do we prioritize in our overall roadmap of software development, and what do we think is going to have an immediate value? And also get into POCs, because a lot of things that get announced at Amazon at reInvent are not always as full features as we need to meet our requirement. But the sooner we can tell Amazon what we need, the sooner they can build it for us. And so we love to get into POCs very quickly. We love to make sure that we understand what the edge cases are for the service and where it can add value to us, and then get that feedback back to Amazon, and potentially meet with product management over there, whatever makes sense for our group, to make sure that we get our feedback in and get those features we want. Hopefully within the next 6 to 12 months. It's Amazon's continuing to iterate and continue to evolve, and they want that feedback just as much as we want to give it.
That's awesome. Awesome. Well, Stephanie, Justin, thank you for these insights. I worked on these slides with you, and I learned things from your answers. So that's really awesome conversations. Again, remember, practitioners, FinOps Foundation members, please join post your questions in the members calls. If you're wondering, how do I get access to the Slack channel so I can ask questions? Join us in the FinOps Foundation. Check us out. Now switching over to the other part of reInvent, the Expo Hall, which is my personal claustrophobic nightmare. But I'm super excited to watch how we do this. So we'll turn it over back to you, JR.
Hey, I got to throw in a curveball question for the panelists. So I did go this year, right, in person, which was the first time in a bit. Is it still worth going in person? Like, we can do these virtual events, we can hear all the announcements. Did you get value, Justin, from being there in person?
I mean, the hallway track is incredible at reInvent.
Yeah.
I mean, getting a chance to run into people who are on the Amazon Twitter, like Ben Kehoe and others, and getting to talk to them and understand what their use cases are, understand their solutions. That's where the real value of reInvent is. You were asked which session I went to. I didn't make it to any sessions.
I didn't go to any either, but I had like amazing conversations for 3 days.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's the value for me. And going to reInvent. I think if you're new to Amazon, and it's a learning conference, first of all, right? So I think the first couple of years of going to the conference, you can learn a lot from the sessions. You can learn a lot from the announcements. The Chalk Talks are amazing. Anybody who I say this is your first reInvent, I said sign up for Chalk Talks. Chalk Talks are a great way to go sit with an engineer, an architect from Amazon, and whiteboard a solution. And you can learn so much for how Amazon thinks about the well-architected framework from those processes. But I think the lower, this is my 7th reInvent, 6th reInvent. I think the value diminishes the more you're in the ecosystem for the session side, but then you get the benefit of the hallway talk. So I think it's really, what are you looking to get out of a conference like this? This year was a blessing because it was the same size it was 6 years ago, which was super nice. It was a bit of a
exactly.
Full
we went back to how the good old days. Yeah.
Yeah, the good old days. So, but when it's 75,000 people and it's wall to wall and you're, transiting the entire strip to get to sessions, it's a little harder to find those value pieces. And so I think it's really going to depend on what happens in the future for reInvent. I think I've been an advocate that they should regionalize reInvent for a while, and break it into an APAC, EMEA, and US event. But we'll see what they do. I think they got a lot of good feedback from this year, and what the feedback was from the teams that went.
It was strange this year not having the Europeans there. And yeah, I mean, you called it a learning conference. I argue that it is now a, getting together with the community conference and having the conversations, because this community is about the connections, right? And walking around there, you just run into people. So Steph, any final words from the Amazon?
Yeah, I just have to agree. I mean, I still have connections from the first time that I went, and they have shaped the career path that I've gone on now. And I'm the one thing some of my team members went who are in the States, and I was more jealous of the fact that they could go and connect to customers and have those one-on-one conversations and learn about what's going on. And like you said, go and see some demos and go and chat to people. And it wasn't about, because we can watch the videos later. I think the speaking slots is still really important. The chalk talks definitely are one of the things that I remember being one of my highlights when I went last time. But I think there is a need for the big speaker slots, because it is good to kind of see it and get it on. It is very engaging when you're watching it live. But I think the big part of it is definitely that networking and being able to have an actual conversation with somebody in physical format, especially after the year we've had. I miss being able to have a one-on-one conversation with somebody.